Hey, so this is going to be another lecture that covers Visual Studio, and in this case we are covering the toolbars and how to customize those. So the toolbar is right underneath the menu bar, right? So currently we have this toolbar, we have two toolbars. We can notice where one starts and one ends. So to the left we have this vertical ellipse, basically this vertical bar. So this right here is one toolbar. And you can also notice kind of where it ends, where we have this drop down. If we hover over that, it actually gives us the name of that toolbar. It is the standard toolbar. And then if we click on here, we get options on that. To the right of that, notice that we have a different toolbar. We have that vertical bar again. We can left click and drag on that. And we can place that where we want. My toolbar may look different than yours. That is because I've customized mine for Unreal Engine 5 development. Some people prefer to have many options available since they don't like hotkeys and they don't want to go up to the menu bars, for example. I prefer to have only the ones that I actually use up here to, again, declutter my workspace. So at the moment I have two toolbars here, the standard toolbar and then the text toolbar. Now, notice that as I move this around, I can place that where I want, as I mentioned. And I'll bring that back up to this top section. And as I move this around, notice that some of those controls will be hidden now because there's not enough space in the toolbar for the control to show up. But if I click on this drop down, those controls will show up in here. Okay, so again, I'll move that to the left. That control is now hidden. I can click down here and I can still access those controls within this drop down menu. I'll just expose all of those controls now. And by controls, I mean buttons and these drop downs and so forth, right? Just in case you are not familiar with visual programming yet, these buttons and such are controls essentially. Alright, we can add and remove toolbars by right clicking in this toolbar. So I'll right click on here in empty space. And notice that as I mentioned, we have the standard toolbar and the text editor toolbar. So I can remove the text editor toolbar and that toolbar will now go away. We only have the standard toolbar. I can bring that back. I can also add other toolbars, such as debug, for example. And again, I can move that wherever I want that to be by hovering over that vertical bar. Alright, I'll just go and remove that debug toolbar. That comes up anyway when we start debugging. Or it should, and if it does not, then you know where you can find that. Alright, next we can add or remove certain controls that show up, the default controls that show up in that particular toolbar by clicking on that. That is the toolbar options for that particular toolbar. In this case, the standard toolbar options. And then you can go to add or remove buttons and then you can select which control you want to add or remove in this menu. For example, I have this start window. You can left click on that to get to the start window and then you can select or open a project. You can pin projects. You can create a new project from here and so forth, that regular startup window that we get. But I prefer not to have that in the toolbar. It's unnecessary because if we go to File and Start Window, then I can get to that, right? So I know where that is close to my other options such as close solution, save and so forth. So I know where that is. I don't need to have that in my toolbar. I can click on this drop down, add or remove buttons. And down here we have start window. So I can click on that and that will now toggle that on and off. Okay, so I can remove that from the toolbar. And the same thing with this other toolbar here, this text editor toolbar. I can add additional controls on that if I want. For example, we can add these controls to decrease or increase the line indentations, to complete a word, and so forth. You may also have noticed we have these options, customize. You can also reset the toolbar if you want. And I'll just go ahead and do that for this demonstration. I will reset the toolbar, click yes, and notice that I get some options that I've removed previously, such as the display quick info. Because I know that hotkey, I don't really need that control to show up. And some of the other ones. So again, I can just go in and remove the ones that I don't want. But it also goes beyond that. Visual Studio is very flexible in that we can actually customize some of these controls as well, the way that they show up and so forth. So for example, we can display whether we want to see only a play here with the start debugging or with the local Windows debugger. We can decide how those show up and also how wide some of these controls are, such as at the moment this control may be a bit wide. We may want to reduce that. I have that increased because, again, this is set up for Unreal Engine 5 development. And some of the configurations that I have are a bit longer than what we have currently, debug and release. Alright, so we can get to that by right-clicking and then Customize. Then we go to Commands. we select the toolbar because that is what we are concerned with for right now in this lecture. And then we can select, for example, the standard toolbar. We know that that is the standard toolbar, and we know that the one to the right is the text editor toolbar. Again, you can figure that out by hovering over that drop down that I mentioned. Okay, so with this toolbar standard selected, I can scroll down. Notice that as I modify the control should change in the toolbar, in the actual toolbar up here. For example, the start without debugging, I will modify that selection, and let's set that to the default style. Click OK. Now we only get that sort of play button. Modify that again. Modify that to text only. For example, click OK. Now we get a text only representation for start without debugging. Modify that again. And I will select image and text. Click OK. That's just because I want that to be similar to the one to the left, which is the debug target. Alright, so with some of these controls we can also modify how wide they are. So with the solution configurations, for example, that might currently take up too much space, so I can select that, modify that. Maybe set that to 100, click OK, and notice that that control now updates. So this is useful because the control now takes up less space within the toolbar. I'll just put this back to 200 for my setup here again. Same with the solution platforms, we can modify that to maybe 70 in the width. You can also click to reset all. You can move controls up and down, so depending on where you want things to be. What I prefer to do is to place the most used controls to the left. For example, I can select one of these and then I can move that down. Because personally I will use the save and the undo and redo buttons more than I will use the navigation, so navigate backwards and forward buttons. Alright, that's about all I want to show in this menu. Again, we have to go to Commands, Toolbar, and then you can choose the particular toolbar. So we can go to Text Editor, for example. Then we can add a new command if we want. You can add a new command in here. You can add a new menu item, and so forth. Now there's actually a shortcut to get to this section. We can, instead of right-clicking on here in a blank space and then going to Customize, we can click on the drop-down for the particular toolbar, so the options for that particular toolbar. Click on that, add remove buttons, and then we can click on Customize down here. And then as you can see, that will automatically navigate to Commands, Toolbar. In this case it has Standard selected, and then we get our controls. Same thing here with the Text Editor toolbar, add or remove buttons, Customize. It automatically navigates to Toolbar, Text Editor, and we have our controls. Also notice that we have these vertical bars that group related controls together. So we can set up our own groups if we want. So with these navigation controls that we've moved previously, let's go and set up a group for that. I will navigate to Customize down here, to navigate to Commands, Toolbar, and Standard. Notice that we don't have a group option to the right here, but what we can do is we can select a control, such as navigate forward, for example. I will click on Modify Selection and begin a group. Now we can select that line. We get a horizontal line in here, but a vertical line is going to show up in the toolbar. So with that line selected, I can move that up and down. I will move that down. Also notice that if we move one of those lines over another one, that one of those groups will disappear. So I have this one selected here and I'll move that up. And that will basically merge those two groups now. That is the bottom two with undo and the navigation. So I will select one of these controls, modify selection and begin a group and click OK. And now we have that vertical bar in the toolbar again. So we have those tools grouped. This is mainly a visual thing, but I just thought I wanted to demonstrate this out of interest. We've discussed how we can customize the toolbar, but we can also customize the menu bar in a similar way. I will leave that for you as an exercise since I don't generally customize the menu bar. Alright, so this was just a bit of a bonus video. Hopefully this will help you out. So you can customize Visual Studio to how you want to work. Alright, that is going to wrap up this lecture. I will see you next time.